Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and Master Certified Life Coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today's episode is all about reimagining your life and career after empty nest as a cattle rancher in Montana. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle with over 1 million downloads and counting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your Master Certified Coach and Midlife Clarity Expert, and I am so glad to be here with you again. If you're a regular listener of this podcast, you may remember that I've published several episodes over the years about empty nest and all of the variations on that theme. When empty nest is coming up, when empty nest is filling back up, communicating in your empty nest, planning what's next post empty nest, and so on. It is a notable milestone. One of the fascinating things has to do with how old you are with this age and stage. Depending on how old you were when you started your family, your empty nest could also sync up with lots of other milestones like turning 50, turning 60, changing your career, or retirement. But ask yourself, when you think about empty nest, do you start getting excited about what's possible for you? Like what you could gain? Or do you tend to think about what's no longer possible, what you could lose? That's why I'm excited to share this interview with you today about reimagination. Very exciting stuff, if I do say so myself. Reimagining all of the possibilities related to thinking of empty nest as an opportunity can be super exciting and, quite frankly, life-changing. That's what we're going to talk about today, how my guest opened up her mind and played with possibility to move forward in a somewhat related but completely different career direction. Now, you may know that I recently launched a sister podcast to the Women in the Middle podcast called Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. My guest today is Meredith McKinney. I originally met my guest Meredith as my guest on the other podcast, but I wanted to share this episode with you here because I know you're going to love it and it fits in so well with the theme of this podcast. Specifically, today's interview is about reimagining your life and career as a cattle rancher after empty nest in Montana. And spoiler alert, you don't have to live in Montana to appreciate her story, but it adds to the interest for sure. And as if that wasn't intriguing enough, it's more than that. It's not only about reimagination, but also about something else that comes up all the time on this podcast, leveraging your skills in midlife. Meredith talks about midlife career change when you've been a cattle rancher in Montana for decades. One of the things I just love about my job as your midlife coach and podcast host is meeting really cool midlife gals doing really courageous and cool things. So much fun. And that's what you're going to be hearing today. But just quick, before we dive in, I want to make sure you know about how you can get unstuck and excited about your life again. Yes, take action and do something about that gross, frustrating feeling you have when you know you're meant for more and you're just feeling stuck and you know you have to do something about it. But you're just spinning and wondering when something is going to change. That was me. I totally get it. And it is painfully frustrating. Here's the thing. I can help you get unstuck, but you can't just sit there waiting for something amazing to happen in your life. You have to do something. And that's exactly why I created the Women in the Middle Academy, to help you get unstuck and create your happiness blueprint for your future, including starting to think about shifting into exceptional self-care or retirement, all the things. And by the way, whatever midlife transition you're thinking about, that can also include having more fun. So if you're ready to change your life for good and feel more relaxed and confident about your future, alongside an awesome community of like-minded women, let's talk about it. I would love to be able to help you get unstuck and be happier than ever before. Go ahead and book your momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com, and we will talk about what this could mean for you. Okay, here we go. As I mentioned, I interviewed Meredith originally on my sister podcast, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. Today, I'm sharing this interview right here on the Women in the Middle show. Meredith's story is about reimagining her life and career as a cattle rancher after empty nest in Montana. Meredith McKinney worked with her husband about 3 decades as a cattle rancher. She decided to change things up after her kids graduated and she and her husband were faced with an empty nest, and that's an empty nest on a ranch. Meredith has moved forward and has another business with her husband in real estate where she has completely reimagined her skills and experience and opened up many new doors. Her new focus is to match buyers and sellers of farm and ranch land in Montana. I loved hearing how Meredith figured out her new direction post-empty nest. She's leveraged her decades of farm and cattle ranch experience to continue her satisfying career. Her story is another example of how your empty nest phase of life can be a beginning rather than an end in midlife. So please enjoy. Welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Susie Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the show. We have a really exciting interview ahead of us about someone who worked with her husband for about 3 decades as a cattle rancher. Today you're going to be meeting Meredith McKinney, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who changed things up after her kids graduated and now has another business with her husband where she matches buyers and sellers of farm and ranch land. Welcome to the show, Meredith. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Susie, for having me. I'm enjoying this conversation.
Well, wait till we get going. We have a little pre-conversation on the podcast, obviously, and we're just having a good time. I thought, oh my gosh, you're so interesting. I can't wait to dive in here. I know we're going to have a really good conversation about your midlife entrepreneur story. We're going to be talking about your business, what's going really well, and also what midlife issues might come up and might be getting in the way, in your way to some extent, and are challenging you in your life and maybe even your business, the way you want to run your business, that sort of thing. So we're going to start out with this question: how old you are, how long you've been an entrepreneur, what your entrepreneurial journey was like, and what you do now. So take it away.
Okay, Susie. Well, I'm 54 years old. I've been married to my husband for 32 years. He has basically been an entrepreneur almost all of our married life. So when people say, oh, being an entrepreneur is so scary, I just kind of can't relate to that because that's just always been a part of who we are. He owned his own car dealership, and then we ranched on the side because anybody who's a rancher understands you have to supplement ranching income. So our whole family was involved in ranching. We did cattle. And so basically they were born on our ranch all the way till the very end. And then we sold beef for farm to table customers. So we did that while we raised our 4 kids. They all started graduating and going off and doing their own thing. And we realized, man, we can't run this place by ourselves.
Wow.
Plus, you don't get a whole lot of vacations as a rancher. So we decided to sell it off, which was a tearful thing, actually. And then it's like, well, what do we do? You know, we've got all this business experience. What do we want to do? And so it's like, you know, farm and ranch real estate is what we want to do because we'll still get to be around all the people we love and all the things we love, but have a little bit of a different life. And so that's what we started doing 4 years ago.
What a change. I mean, first of all, when you said you sold the business, you didn't just sell the business, you sold your home, right?
Yeah, we sold all of it. So, and it was right before COVID, you know, and it was an emotional thing. I will not say it was not. My husband cried when he sold the cows.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're just like, you know, we're ready for a different phase of life. And so the doors just opened for farm and ranch real estate with this company. And we just thought, you know what, this is a really great opportunity. What do we want to do? You know, now that the kids are grown and gone, which I think a lot of people start to ask themselves when the kids are grown and gone. And so that's just kind of how it evolved. And now we're working together more day to day than we were before. You know, before we all had our own responsibilities. So now it's more in the office together, traveling together. And that's, we had a little bit of a challenge at the beginning, but we've kind of figured it out and we get along and we like each other.
Thank God. Like I can see how that would be weird to figure out. A lot of people I'm talking to, there's a total adjustment when one person, especially when one person retires and the other person is gearing up. So that happens a lot. And I had one interview recently where the woman had a business and then her husband needed something. So she started another business that they could do together. And so that was interesting. So I don't know. I didn't know what I expected from reading your application, but here you sit wearing pearls. I didn't quite expect that. So it's a real reminder that your new business is completely different than the other business.
It is. It is. And ranchers can dress up when the need arises. And ranching's a little different than it was even 30 years ago, with ATVs and UTVs. It's not all horseback. There's so many computers to help with genetics and all of that kind of stuff. And so it's great because we can relate to all of our clients on every level, because it's like, what, we've been here, we've done this. And it's just really fascinating to talk to these older ranchers because they're selling off generational ranches because they're either too old or their family doesn't want to ranch anymore. And just sitting and listening to their stories is just absolutely fascinating, and realizing that they trust you to do the best job for them, so that they can do what they want to do is a very humbling thing. And it's also a very great responsibility, that we don't take lightly, because they're entrusting us with the greatest asset they have that had a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into it. And so, you end up being friends with a lot of them, and it's really neat.
I love this part of your story, and I was very touched when you hinted at it in your application, because a lot of what I do too is listen to people's stories, and I'm fascinated by the stories. But really, who better than you and your husband to be doing this job? It's as emotional for them as it was for you, and especially if there's that legacy piece to it and it's a generational ranch. Can you set the stage a little bit? Because I would imagine that a lot of the listeners are kind of like me, where I didn't really know what you were talking about. So you live in rural Montana, and what kind of ranching are we talking about?
Cattle ranching. Montana, there are more cows than people.
Oh,
so that's where we're going there. There's a lot of wheat farms, barley farms, beet farms. So you have crop farms too. So it's both of those. So it's either one or the other that we're dealing with. And it is very emotional, and we can relate to that because we've been there too. And so there's a lot of psychology that goes into dealing with all that emotion with various family members, because they're not always on the same page. And then working through all that when somebody's actually going to buy it, that this is really going to happen. And, you have to sift through a lot of different things there. It's a fascinating thing. And like I said, we just love having clients that trust us to do that, because it is a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And some of these farms are 100 acres and some are 8,000 acres. I mean, it goes the gamut. So it's pretty huge.
Wow. And who are your clients that are looking for ranches and farms? Are they young families? Like, who has this dream?
There are some young families. I mean, it's more difficult financially for young families, but there are programs out there to help beginning farmers. Sometimes it's another neighbor that wants to buy it because it's like they just want to expand it because they don't want somebody they don't know buying it. Sometimes it's out of state people that just want the lifestyle because COVID really helped people kind of think through what they wanted in life. Yeah. And it really did shift the geographic dynamics in some of these states, especially in Montana. And of course, you've got the show Yellowstone going. So everybody wanted to move to Montana there for a while.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And then you've got some investors that will buy the land, and then they might let the owner stay and keep farming it, or they'll lease it out to a neighbor to farm.
That's fascinating. And where do people go after they make a sale like this? It's such a massive lifestyle change. What typically happens? And do you help them too relocate?
We don't help them relocate. Well, if they want to buy land, yes. But typically, a lot of it's health related. So they need to be closer to bigger medical facilities. So they might move to Billings or something like that. Or maybe they're moving in with family. That's typically what it is.
Wow. Okay. Now this question might seem very naive, But I have one friend who has property, and I always think, what would you do with all that land if you're not actually farming it? Like, it's so beautiful to live rurally. And I always think, are those solar power farms, are they happening where you are? I always see them driving into the cottage.
Well, the windmill farms.
Oh, the windmill farms.
The windmill farms are becoming popular. So you see those scattered here and there. Those are probably the most common. There has been some crypto mining, believe it or not, going on.
I don't even know what that is.
Montana. Well, I had to learn a little bit about it too, but it's just mining into the earth. So you have that, and then there is some oil exploration that goes on. But most people, it's grazing land for cattle, it's crop ground, hunting is a big thing, recreational uses as well.
Wow. Meredith, you're just like such a representative of rural life. And there's so much rural farm life. I just don't know anything about it. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. The other thing that I would imagine is quite different now is that with the ranch, it sounds like your current job is more social than your old lifestyle. So what's that transition been like for you?
Well, I will say when you have 4 kids, you do have a lot of social stuff going on. So it's not like I was like totally out in the middle and not seeing people. But I think for me, it's been a lot of being able to present and go into situations where I don't know people and say, okay, this is what we can do. Meeting with a lot of vendors that we use, like bankers and title companies and those kinds of things. You know, and being a woman in the business is a little different as well, because there aren't as many women in farm and ranch realty as residential. So that's a little bit different too. And there have been some interesting situations.
Like what?
I've been to ranches, you know, and they're old widowers. They haven't been married for quite a while, you know, and you show up at their house and it's like, it's probably the first time a woman's been in their house in 25 years. And they are just like, oh my word, I guess it's not very clean, you know, things like that. So it could just be interesting at times.
Wow, I guess so. That's a really funny, but I can totally see how that would happen. Okay, so as you know, I love talking about midlife challenges as if there weren't enough challenges with what you do. What are some of the things that pop up with midlife related issues?
Well, I think the work-life balance is a big one, you know, and I know everybody talks about that at different ages, but I think at our age, especially, and when you work with your husband as well, it can get kind of convoluted. And trying to find that balance of, okay, this is work, this is not work. When do we unplug? How do we unplug? You know, and we've had to find that balance and find interests opposite of each other to do and that kind of thing. I think that's been one of the biggest ones.
Can you give me an example of something you're trying out or that you figured out?
Well, I was a teacher for a long time, so I started a book club, and so that's been fun. So, you know, you get to talk about all sorts of different books and meet all sorts of interesting people with different viewpoints. So I like that. The other thing is I'm a musician as well. So I joined a community choir. So that's been fun. So, you know, it's just finding different things like that where they don't know you as a farm and ranch realtor. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, I'm just a normal person kind of thing. My husband teaches hunting safety and that kind of stuff. So he does his own thing with all of that. And then he's an avid outdoorsman, so he's outside a lot.
And do your kids, did they settle far away from you or close?
Well, it's kind of funny. 4 kids, 3 of them live in Montana. But Montana is a very big state. And so one lives way on the opposite side. So she's like 8 hours away. And then one lives about 4 hours away and one lives in the same town we do. And then the other child is on the other side of the United States.
Oh, wow.
So
that's pretty far away. I have one kid 5 hours away and I whine and complain about it all the time.
Well, but when you live out west, you're kind of used to driving. Everything's spread out. So it just is what it is.
But I would imagine even for your job, you must be driving all over the place. How does that work?
It does. We service eastern Montana, so we don't go to the western side of the state, but we try to stay within 2 to 3 hours. of everything. But yeah, we're in the car, so we listen to a lot of podcasts and do a lot of talking on the phone and
Yeah.
everything else. So.
Well, I call podcasts a party in your purse because it's like there's so much entertainment there. Any topic you want, you can typically find. It's so good.
It's
okay,
true.
so you're figuring out the balance and unplug, because I would imagine you could work all the time if you wanted to.
Absolutely.
It's very easy. Yeah. I think entrepreneurs, we really struggle with that because we have so many good ideas. We're so motivated and excited and all of it.
And it's in the middle of the night. It's like, oh, I have this great idea. It's like, no, I need to sleep.
Oh my gosh. And what's going on with your mother? You made a note that your mother is aging.
Well, I alluded to it before. I think COVID kind of changed the parameters for a lot of people. And my mother has since passed away. When we started doing the real estate journey, she was on the decline with dementia.
Oh.
We could not care for her. So we had to put her in an assisted living home. And then COVID hit, like literally a couple months later. And it was very stringent, so we could not visit in person. And that was very, very difficult. And then all of the emotions of that and caring for her long distance or via Zoom when she didn't understand why I couldn't go see her every day. It was very, very difficult. Probably one of the most difficult things in life.
Well, I'm so sorry. That's terrible.
But, and I know a lot of people our age are dealing with aging parents and healthcare and what's the best scenario for them. Learned a lot through it, and we were very thankful she was in a wonderful facility that took very, very good care of her, but it didn't change the fact that we couldn't see her. But thankfully, COVID did lift before she passed away, but by that point, she didn't recognize any of us, which was difficult. So when you've got that emotion going, when you're trying to build a brand new business, it was just a lot.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking, I'm really thinking about what you said with meeting the bankers and the loan people and all of that. Like those are people you don't know. You need to be really confident and, hold yourself well and, be confident in your own skin, and you're going through all this crap, meeting all these new people. Yeah, that's a classic midlife problem. I'm so sorry. That's terrible.
Well, or literally, I've got the assisted living on speed dial. And so literally, if I see that phone number come up, I have to hang up with whoever I'm talking to or interrupt that meeting because I'm like, this is an emergency. I'm really sorry. I have to do this. But, and everybody was understanding, but it just was what it was.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I also wanted to ask you about where everybody lived and get, just understand Montana a little bit is the grandchildren thing. Now, so grandkids come up in these interviews all the time. So you've got this extra driving around distance and flying as well going on. So how is that working for you? You've got the flexibility with your business, but you've got the distance. So tell us.
Right. Well, we have 3 grandkids, and they're the ones that live far away. They're in the military, so they're in Arizona right now. They're moving to North Carolina in a couple months. So basically in Montana, in the winter, it gets very cold. So it's like, that's when we travel. So we make points to go travel to them during the winter months. And then we FaceTime a lot and just try to be very intentional with spending time with them. And it's usually a couple times a year. We wish it was more.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, no, I think FaceTime is just helping so much. I mean, it's not a substitute, but it does help, especially I would imagine right after the visits when everybody is very connected again, especially with the little ones. Yeah. So as an older woman, you mentioned that you don't have the looks and charisma of the younger set, but that you bring great life experience and wisdom to the table. Now, I think you do have the looks and charisma of the younger set, quite frankly.
Well,
I don't know what you're talking about, but so I wondered where that was coming from.
If you look at real estate, more on the residential side, not what we do. They're the young, hip looking real estate agents with perfect photos, and all of this stuff. It's like, well, no, that's not me. That's not me at all. But I think at our age, we have a lot of life experience that's valuable, that's really valuable, and that makes us really good business people just because we've seen a lot of stuff. and we just know whether people are genuine or not. We can just read between the lines with people, what they're not saying. And in our business, that's huge. And that's worth a lot. And that makes you, and we are risk takers, but we're not. I guess we're educated risk takers.
Right.
Or what I would say, so we can see when something is good, or you should move forward with this, or maybe we need a little more information about this, or I don't think this is a good idea at all. I think that's what our age brings with business ownership.
Yeah. And I think with what you've done, I couldn't imagine a better transition from ranch life to what you're doing. Like, you are the perfect couple to be doing this work. It seems to me. I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks that.
We love it.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Tell me, what is next in your business? What's next for you? What are you really working toward?
Like typical business people, there's 3-year plan, the 5-year, the 10-year, whatever. So we like, okay, this is where we want to be for retirement. But in the meantime, what does this look like? And a lot of times those can be financial goals. But I think as we get older, we realize that relationships and spending time with family are way more important. So for us, some of it's been taking big family vacations together every couple of years, which is difficult when everybody's married and spread out.
Yep.
But to us, that's important. And also part of the conversation we're having is, do one of our children want to take over this business eventually? And what is that going to look like? We haven't sorted through all that yet, but it is a conversation that we're having.
Is there some interest?
With one, possibly.
Yes. Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, what kind of a place do you live in? Do you still have land?
We do, but not as much as we used to, but we do. Mm-hmm.
I would think it would be hard to, as young as you are, I know we're talking about being over 50, but as young as you are to have transitioned like this, I think it would be hard not to have a vista with what you've come from.
Well, I tell you, we can't live in a neighborhood.
I wouldn't imagine you could.
It doesn't happen. So we have a beautiful vista from where we're at, and we like it. And it's a manageable piece of property so that, when we're traveling for work, we don't have to worry about things.
Do you have animals?
No.
Not even a cat?
No, our neighbor has a bunch of cats, but we have deer in the yard. We have pheasants in the yard. So we have a lot of wildlife that we enjoy, but because we're on the road so much, yes, we don't want to have to worry about caring for animals at this point.
Oh my gosh, it's such a big worry. It's my biggest worry. I've got the big 130-pound, which is nothing compared to your cattle, but 130-pound Newfoundland. And then I have a parrot, a little chatty parrot. Oh. And the two of them, when I go away, they're my biggest concern because the Newf cares more about my husband. The parrot cares more about me. But anyway, it is a big concern because once the kids are grown, they'll help when they can, but they're not always available. That's for sure.
Right.
I love also that you mentioned the big family trips. I've certainly seen more people do that, more grandparents hosting a big trip. It's so hard to get everybody together. Mm-hmm. It is a big expense. It does need to be a priority that takes planning, or that'll never happen either. But yeah, it's such a beautiful way to make memories and gives opportunities for the cousins to get to know everybody too. And
exactly.
Yeah. It's so good.
For new spouses to hang out. And so it's been good. We're trying to plan one for next summer. Our fingers are crossed that it's going to happen.
Oh, I wish you luck with that. Where are you going to go?
We're trying to go to Alaska.
Fantastic. On a cruise?
Yes.
Nice. That's so great.
Yes.
I want to do that too. That's really, really great.
Yes. When you get to our age, you realize what your bucket list is. Mm-hmm. And we just started talking about, we need to start checking the bucket list off. And that was one of the things. So we talked about it last Christmas and said, hey, everybody on board for this. Now we have to see if jobs cooperate.
Yeah, it's so annoying with the jobs.
Yes.
Somebody's got to work. Somebody has to work. Now, the one other thing I wanted to ask you about with your lifestyle and all this driving, I know that you want to keep yourself healthy, but how are you dealing with that in any kind of a routine or goal or anything like that with your demanding travel schedule?
Well, actually, it's funny you asked that because I have joined the gym. I joined the gym in March and I've been going at least 4 days a week because I found that helps my psyche. Plus, it's a great way to meet people. And I have had some health issues. Some extended family members have too. And we just realized how important that is. And that, eating healthy, which is a little bit hard sometimes when you're on the road in very rural places because you can't pick where you're going to eat. So it's just, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and take classes and work out.
Do you have a special cooler or a routine about what you're taking with you on all of this driving around?
Well, we always have a stash because we're so rural and you never know what's going to happen. So we always have a ton of water bottles. We always have snack bars or protein bars of some kind. We always have that on hand.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, but you're right. Like we take for granted that I can walk 2 blocks and get to a plaza. And even when I get out of the city, I'm not going as far as you're going to find a convenience store.
Right.
Much easier to happen on it. Yeah. No, you're very interesting, Meredith. I have to say, I'm really trying to understand what it's like for you. And it's so interesting. And I love that you're working with your husband too. That's fascinating.
Well, to put in perspective how rural we are, the town we live in is about 6,000. The closest Walmart, which I guess you would consider civilization, is an hour and a half away.
So you can't just zip over and pick something up.
No.
Now, what about with mail order though? Where do you go to get your mail?
Well, Amazon delivers.
Oh, Amazon right to the door?
Delivers. FedEx delivers.
To the door? I assumed that would not be.
No, they do.
Oh, that's amazing.
It might take a little longer. It's not like it's next day delivery, but so.
Fascinating. All right, Meredith. How can people get a hold of you?
My husband and I work for Whitetail Properties Real Estate. So it's whitetailproperties.com and then just /Meredith McKinney. And that'll take you straight to my page and you can learn all about me.
Is it agent /Meredith McKinney or is it straight up?
I think you can just put /Meredith McKinney.
Okay.
If you just go to whitetailproperties.com and put my name in.
Oh, perfect.
I'll come up.
Perfect. And of course, I'll have these links in the show notes as well. And you never know who's going to pop in for a visit. If I ever end up in Montana, you'd be worth the drive.
Oh, please come. Because I would love to meet you in person.
Oh my God. It would be fun. I have never been, to Montana and it's come up a few times in conversation. It sounds really good. So Meredith, thank you so much. What a fun chat this was. This is truly something I know nothing about. I don't get a chance to meet people like you that often with this kind of experience. It's been delightful. Thank you so much for sharing all of it with us.
Well, thanks so much. I've enjoyed being with you today.
Super fun. Okay, that's it for this episode. I don't know about you, but Meredith was the first cattle rancher I've ever met, and I was fascinated by her rural life out there in a part of the United States I don't know anything about. I thought Meredith did an amazing job of sharing her experience of starting to reimagine her life and career path forward. She understood her unique skill set and how she and her husband could shift in to ranch-related real estate. I love how she applied her skills to new possibilities. I've coached many clients who really didn't appreciate how transferable their skills were. Is that you? Meredith's story really puts a spotlight on how you can start to think through what other possibilities there are and may make a lot of sense for you. If you need help with making a midlife transition, tweak, adjustment, or change yourself and want to understand how mindfulness can help you get out of your own way so that you're happier overall, I'm your gal. It is way more fun to do this together. Now, as you know, this podcast is all about how to love your life again after 50. It's really all about coaching you to be more intentional and to incorporate mindfulness into your life as a regular practice. This is how you put yourself on your agenda. My focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and focused on your current values and priorities so you don't have regrets. I can help you create the confidence, courage, and meaning that you're looking for. So if you're ready to take a baby step, you're invited to book your momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com and we'll chat. One more thing, you're also invited to purchase my new masterclass, Get Unstuck Midlife Clarity Fast and Easy. where you can get clear about your next chapter priorities without spin, confusion, and overwhelm in less than an hour. Head over to www.midliferoadmap.com. And finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.susierosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and look for episode 372. You'll also see links there for the new show, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.